Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the candidate forum for Kootenai County Commissioner District 3 seat and Kootenai County Clerk position. This evening's event is hosted by the Coeur Group in partnership with CDA TV. We ask that you now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. My name is Jimmy McAndrew, and I will act as moderator for this evening's event. To my right is Matthew Higgins, and to my left is Shane Greenfield, and they will be serving as panelists. To my far left is Brian Babb, who will be tonight's official timekeeper. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. The order of opening statements were decided by a coin flip prior to this evening. Each candidate will also have 1 minute for a closing statement in reverse order of the opening statements. Each candidate will be given the chance to answer questions prepared for by a committee made up of core group members. Responses will be limited to 30 seconds each, and the moderator will stop candidates when time has expired. However, the moderator may ask additional questions or seek additional clarification at his discretion. Audience members are asked to remain quiet during the forum out of respect for the candidates. We appreciate all of those in attendance this evening and those that are watching from their televisions or streaming online. Folks, let's get ready for an event. We will first welcome to the stage your Kootenai County Clerk candidates, Jim Brannon and Dan Gukin. Mr. Brannon will be the first to provide an opening statement. Mr. Brannon, when you are ready.
Thank you, Jimmy. And first off, I would really like to thank you all for the opportunity to participate tonight. Literally, the Coeur Group, thank you for having this. Thank you for all the good you do in our community. I promised our citizens a positive campaign, and I've run one. It's my hope this forum will help you, the taxpayer, choose the candidate that best reflects your values. It's been a great honor to serve as county clerk since 2013. Since joining the county, we've seen steady growth, increased demand for services. To meet these challenges, my main focus has been to look at current processes with all of my teams and find ways to do things more efficiently. These efforts have netted a budgetary decrease of 14.5% in the clerk's office, and I applaud our employees for their innovation and hard work to save the taxpayers' money. I look forward to continuing to represent your best interests as county clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gukin, when you're ready.
Thank you, Jimmy. So my name is Dan Gukin. I've been a Kootenai County resident for 23 years. I'm an author and an online trainer. I wrote the For Dummies books. And you can read the rest of my bio on my website at dangukin.com. Let me tell you what I'm going to be doing for the next 4 years as your county clerk. Number one, transparency. We need to open the budget. We need to let the people who need to use the budget software. Elections. Let's improve the election process. Let's add more training. Let's do a county voter guide. Isn't it about time we had one? Let's see if we can get registering for absentee ballots in a longer period of time. Let me communicate well with the commissioners so that we can resolve inefficiencies in the whole county system. You know, my goal and the goal of the people who work in the clerk's office will be to serve you, the citizens of Kootenai County. And I think we can get it done with your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Thank you both. First question to Mr. Brannon. Mr. Brannon, you cite 3 words on each page of your website, jimbrannon.com: transparency, efficiency, and accuracy. Are there conditions under which transparency must be deprioritized under the duties and responsibilities of the county clerk?
Transparency should never be deprioritized. The county clerk right now puts up more information on our webpage than any municipality or other area that I've seen. We put up our budget book. We put up our quarterly report. We put up our comprehensive annual financial report. We put up our weekly payables, which has an improvement. We are now doing dual reporting for those payables. And quite honestly, about the only thing I don't put up online is my personal checkbook, and I'm not going to do that.
And to you, Mr. Gookin, you also cite transparency as something you have championed for in your role as Coeur d'Alene City Council person. You have been critical of the clerk's stances on transparency, but does he have a point?
No. The clerk is not the keeper of records. The clerk is the provider of records. When someone complains in the clerk's office about getting 1,000 public records requests from an individual over a 4-year period, it tells me that there's something a little less than transparent going on in the clerk's office. When they say that if you look at his budget and you see only 2 line items for a whole department, what do they spend on travel? What do they spend on training? Well, they say you can do a public records request, but then they complain about the public records request. When I'm your clerk, I'm going to put everything in that budget. You know, not a lot of text. There's a lot of text in it. But the fact that you have 1,000 public records requests from one guy tells me that there's something a little less than transparent going on. Yeah, they have a lot of data up there. The budget isn't transparent, and they hold a lot of information, not only from citizens, but from other people who work at the county. And that has to stop. It will stop when I'm your clerk.
Thank you both. Mr. Brannon, what would you say to the claims or to that person that submitted 1,000 public requests?
I would say every citizen has the right to know what they wish to know from their government. And if the person asks you the question and you answer it, and he submits another public records request the next day, and you answer it, and you continue ad infinitum, I don't know what more you can do. You can provide the records, but you can't help them understand what they say. And quite honestly, it's a couple of people who are very much citizen activists. Good for them. I'm glad they do it.
Thank you, Mr. Brannon. Mr. Gookin, you're a self-proclaimed budget hawk. Are there specific line items in the clerk's office, or I'm sorry, that the clerk's office oversees that you would be interested in tackling or have concerns about?
How the hell would I know that? He doesn't put them in his budget. I mean, I would have to do a records request, another one, to go ahead and do that. The auditor's department lists 2 line items, which is salaries and then everything else. That's not transparent. You know, in order for me to find out what he spends on travel, which is a lot, I have to go through those weekly reports, and I have to find all the items that deal with travel. And this is, you know, is that effective? Is that communicating your budget, the county, the way it spends its money to members of the public? You know, when I'm in there, we're going to have a budget that's going to have that data in there so I can answer your questions, so I can go through it line by line and find things that they've spent. And like, well, what's this for? Why is this amount? I mean, in the city budget, which is a lot thinner than his budget, but it has a lot more information, I can look back over 5 years and I can see what we spend on training. And if there's a spike, I can ask a question. And that's what I do in the city. That's how I can be a budget hawk. You can't be a budget hawk with a budget the way it's currently set up at the county.
All right, Mr. Brannon, how do you respond to Mr. Gookin's claims?
Just totally not based in fact whatsoever. Our weekly payables are there. When we do our budget, it is online. You can see it. You can see every bit of it. And we have been told by our auditors that the narrative helps people understand instead of a listing of numbers. And quite honestly, we can all list a bunch of numbers. We can all do the math. But wouldn't it be nice to know what is causing the communications budget to go up? Wouldn't it be nice to know what's causing the B budget, personnel budget to go up? That's why it's listed in narrative form. And if he doesn't like the way that's done, well, I'm sorry, but it's not based in fact that the budget is not up there.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Brannon. What has been your proudest achievement as Kootenai County Clerk, and what would you do differently if given the opportunity?
Well, thank you. That I would say that my proudest achievement is the team that we have built. We have 90 people, and those 90 people work really hard, and they work really hard for you, the taxpayers. And doggone it, I am proud of the team that we have built. If I had one thing to do differently, I would have made some adjustments in personnel earlier in my term.
And Mr. Gukin, what has been your proudest achievement in serving the residents of Kootenai County, and what would you do differently if given the opportunity?
Okay, do different. Well, I would have loved to have all those property tax reductions passed that I proposed. Every year they'd raise property taxes. I would come up and say, here's some cuts that'll offset the increases. Sometimes my motion doesn't get a second. This past September it did, and we cut $500,000 from the city's annual budget from the general fund, which resulted in a zero property tax increase. We also helped the city, well, you know, private industry should do what private industry should do, and the city was about to take over something that private industry did. And that was part of the reduction that I proposed, was let's not do the chip seal program in-house because we have a company out there, 2 of them, who can bid competitively for us. It's not the role of government. So I'm very proud of that. I wish I would have done more of that.
Thank you, Mr. Gukin. Now, you've been extremely vocal in your approach to this race, driving the point that it's a nonpartisan position. That said, can you tell us why voters in a county that very much leans Republican should ignore their party affiliation and cast a vote for you?
Well, because I'm going to do a hell of a job when I'm the clerk. I don't think this position should be partisan anyway. Why do we have a partisan coroner? Is he asking a dead body whether they were Republican or Democrat? I mean, these are silly little, this is partisan at all. Okay, he doesn't set policy. Well, I'm your clerk, I will not set policy. It's not a policy-making decision. We follow what the law is. We don't make the law. And we need to do that. And that's not a partisan thing, one way or the other. Look at the city of Coeur d'Alene. We're all nonpartisan up there. You may know kind of which way we lean a little bit, but we get along. There's no division. We don't bring in all that national divisiveness into the city. Why should we do it in the county? You know, yeah, it helps the uninformed people to think they're voting for the right guy. But I would appreciate it if people would actually research the job, see who the candidates are, and say, who's going to put the energy into this? Who's going to do a good job representing the citizens of the county? That's the whole point. We need someone in there who's going to represent the citizens. It's red, I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Gukin.
I'm not even looking at you, you know that.
Mr. Brannon, does the R next to your name provide value when it comes to electing a county clerk? What would you say to those voters that see it as extremely nonpartisan?
Well, I would say to them that Idaho Code clearly makes this a partisan race. And I would also say to them that if you're running in a nonpartisan race, I would hope you're running for judge, because those are the only nonpartisan things on your ballots. Does having an R beside my name help me? Sure it does. And I'm glad for that. I'm a proud Republican. But I also will say I have many friends across the aisle. I've met some in this campaign season that are great people. And I don't know what else to say other than, yes, the R helps. What can you say?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brannon. The next question is for you again. Mr. Gukin has stated that he will stay in his current position of city council for the city of Coeur d'Alene until his term ends. And Mr. Brannon, knowing this, knowing the day-to-day duties and workload associated with the clerk's position, do you have any concerns about Mr. Gukin's workload or his capacity as Coeur d'Alene City Council person interfering with his ability to fulfill his duties as Kootenai County Clerk, if elected? No,
I don't have any concerns about that because he's going to be a great councilman, but he's not going to be the clerk. End of my comment.
But I just got it. But let's just pretend he was. Do you have any concerns? I
haven't run that through my mind yet, Jimmy. I just haven't.
Knowing. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how I reframe this question, but do you have concerns knowing the position as you do, already working the 40 to 50 hours that you cite on online? Do you have concerns either with the workload or interference from handling another position such as your challenger does?
Thank you, Jimmy, for rephrasing it so a thick-headed Irishman can understand it. All right, what I see here is a potential for conflict of interest. There are times where the city and the county are working on different things, and there are times where the city and the county are working together. those can't come at cross purposes. That would be a little bit difficulty, but knowing Mr. Gookin, I would assume he would recuse himself in that situation. And what I will say is, it is a full-time job, and I really think that you're stretching yourself a little thin with the other, but I don't know. I mean, if somebody doesn't need sleep, perhaps they could do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brennan. Mr. Gookin, the county clerk position is one that's considered full-time. Should the voters be concerned about casting a vote for you given your current workload, and do you foresee any conflicts of interest, as Mr. Brennan brought up, in serving Kootenai County and the city of Coeur d'Alene?
Well, I'd rather have them concerned about that than just blindly voting for a Republican, because it's a good question. And yes, I have a full-time job. It's what I do. We all do on council. We have full-time jobs, even the mayor. And so it's a part-time job. Council's a part-time job. I can handle the clerk's job. You know, the thing is, it's not about the hours you put in, and I will put in the hours because I gotta clean up a mess. But I will put in the hours. That was one of your people. I will put in the hours, but when Cliff Hayes was the clerk, and he's my idol here, he would work from like 7 in the morning to about 11:30, and then he'd go home. But the key is he's available, and I will be available, or available.
Would you comment on whether or not you would run again for city council if elected?
I'm done. I'm going to term limit myself to 2. I actually, when I talked to the employee associations to try to get their support for this race, the look on their face, I mean, I just told them there was no Santa Claus. They were so sad. But I said, no, I've got to term limit myself because I think we need to let other people, that's the way the system should work. We don't need professional politicians. And I'm going to give someone else a shot at it. I may come back in the future. I'm not going to run for mayor. But 2 terms is good enough. I think it's good.
Thank you.
Whether I win this or not.
Mr. Brannon, on his YouTube channel, your opponent points out that 43 of 70 polling places reported inaccuracies in polling places during the May 2018 primary, as reported in the election narrative. Is this a concern of yours? And if so, can you describe those remedies?
Well, I haven't seen his YouTube channel, but that is a concern. I believe that what we have is we have to take the polling places very seriously. I want to give a shout out to all of our poll workers. These people show up and they're there for 14, 15 hours. And you know, when there is inaccuracies, we talk about it. But what we don't do is we don't throw them under the bus and we say, well, they're not well trained. They are well trained. But what we have to do is continue to strive for not only more accuracy, but faster results.
And Mr. Gookin, you also cite on your YouTube channel that mistakes can and will be made under your watch. How do you respond to Mr. Brannon's comments regarding the elections process going forward?
First, thanks for plugging my YouTube channel. I appreciate that. The data that I used in that video was his data that I got from the elections office. It's the election narrative that they produce after the report. So these were statistics and information from the clerk's office. And I discussed it with people who would know. They said training is an issue. There's issues with the poll workers. I mean, they're not volunteers, they are paid, but they need to know how to handle things, and some things just don't get handled well. So we need to supplement their training, because they have training already, but with some online training. They don't have to bring them in. We can give them stuff to do online. It's going to cost money, yes, but I think it's worth it to ensure the election process. We can also try to get students involved with the elections. Maybe get them credit from high school or NIC to be involved. Maybe get involved former law enforcement, former military. Maybe apply for, I know that county employees can work the polls, but maybe we can provide more incentive to get them to go there and to help these other people who volunteer who can get easily confused and frustrated.
Yeah, I have just a quick follow-up question for Mr. Brannon. So, Mr. Brannon, earlier you did say that the do-over, if you had to make, would be to making personnel changes upon maybe discovery of issues or challenges. So how do you... I understand that you love your people and that you give them a great pat on the back, and I believe that to be true. But is that a concern that they're there are issues there and that personnel changes would need to be made in order to avoid that do-over in this case?
It's personnel issues. We won't discuss that because there are things that need improvement. We always are looking for improvement in our auditors team, our recorders team, our elections team is no different. The training that they get is good. I'm glad he agrees with my information that was in the voter guide. I believe in online training as well, and we're going to do it because we've got to work on focusing more accuracy and more timely results. Have I discussed that with people in my team? Yes, I have. And the clerk is known for smiling and taking the heat for a little bit. And after a while, you get tired of that.
All right, Mr. Gukin. The average household in Kootenai County, based upon data sourced from the U.S. Census Bureau, consists of a family of 4 with a median household income of $50,924. How would your service as a county clerk specifically impact the average citizen in Kootenai County?
Well, the clerk provides services. And actually, unfortunately, probably the most interaction with the clerk is going to be with the clerks of the court downstairs when they pay their traffic tickets. And those people work really hard. They're not paid well. Some of them might actually be on food stamps. So one of the things you got to do is customer service is number one. Again, they serve the county. They don't serve the clerk. This is not a personality cult. This is about public service. And so it's important that they serve the public. And you can do that with motivating them, with being a very positive source within the clerk's office, which is what I plan. Again, I've been endorsed by the employees of the city of Coeur d'Alene. And that means a lot to me. It means I work well with them. Sorry, red.
Mr. Brandon, same question to you.
And that I would do what? Differently?
No, sir. In your term, what do you feel like you have affected that average Kootenai County citizen?
Well, I think just cutting the clerk's budget by 14.5%. What we can't, in the clerk's division, we don't get to make policy. We follow the law. And all we can do is be more efficient and do it right the first time. And I'm glad he talks about serving the public, because that's our job. I don't work for the Republicans, the Democrats, the Catholics, the Baptists, the agnostics. I work for every taxpayer in Kootenai County, and we're proud of the customer service we provide in our auditor team and in our recorder team, etc.
So, how do I want to rephrase this? The average citizen in Kootenai County probably doesn't understand exactly what the clerk does for them. I guess the point that we're trying to drive is what specifically sets you apart from the person up there across from you, and why should the viewers tonight or the people talking around the water cooler tomorrow say I would vote over this person over another person? What's in it for them?
I've made promises, I've kept them. I've delivered results to the county taxpayer, and I've cut my budget. And that's what I can do for the county citizen making just north of $50,000.
Dan?
Well, if you talk to other employees who work at the county who have to interface with the clerk's office, you find he's an incredible stumbling block because he doesn't provide access to the budget so they can do their jobs. There's a lot of inefficiency there. It's just, and he hasn't mentioned that yet. I'm sure it's one of his issues, but providing access to the people who need to use the software to do their jobs will make them serve the public better. Right now, they have to wait on his approval, and that's a problem. 14% reduction, by his own words, that was an increase in revenue. It wasn't a budget cut.
And I hate to just camp out here, but I want to give Mr. Brandon the chance to respond to that.
The budget expenditure was $8.5 million, now it's $7 million. That is not an increase in revenue. Yes, we've increased revenue. And I really do get a little, I don't want to say aggravated, but I would say annoyed when things that I say are taken out of context. Our budget spending is $7 million. It was $8.5 million. That's a fact.
And Obamacare is a fact, and that's why it went down $1 million.
And you know what? I am not going to argue the fact that the Affordable Care Act, as I like to call it, did help the county assistance program do much better as far as building a fund balance so that we don't have to levy at all this year.
And the commissioners were the ones who made it so. He asked for 700, and the commissioners cut that to 0.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on. We might come back to some of this before we're done.
Mr. Brannon, is there anything that keeps you up at night, which you have concerns for the citizens of Kootenai County, and what can be done in the clerk's office to address that?
You know, I have a lot of concerns with the citizens of Kootenai County. We are facing substantial, very rapid growth. We've all been discovered. Everybody knows that. The concerns that I have is that we make sure that we keep up with that growth. We need to have a community that is safe for our children and for our adults to walk the streets. We have to have the streets that are drivable. And we have to have a jail that keeps the bad guys and ladies out of the general community. Our growth has presented a lot of challenges, and we've got to tackle that head on.
And Mr. Gukin, same question for you.
Not a thing he said has anything to do with the clerk's office. I mean, that's all policy being set by cities and set by the commissioners. The clerk is an administrative job. It's a service job. It's providing public records. It's oversight of spending, which is something I think needs a lot of improvement. That process, you got to work well with the commissioners. Commissioners had to hire an extra person because he won't talk to them, because he's mad at one of the commissioners. And so that's your people again laughing at that. And this is what's going on, and the public doesn't know this. He wants to be the 4th commissioner. He wants a vote on that board. I just want to do the clerk's job. I want to go ahead and support those people and serve the public.
Mr. Brand, I would like to give you a chance to respond to that.
There is a separation of duties between the clerk and the commissioners. That is clear in statute, and the commissioners make the budget. The clerk tracks and compiles the budget. I have no desire to do the job of the commissioner because the job of the clerk is a full-time job.
Thank you, Mr. Brannon. And a little bit more lighthearted question. If you're elected, you walk into office your first day, if you had a magic wand, what would you change?
Oh, this question.
Yes, it's not the magic genie, it's the magic wand.
It's the magic wand this time. Oh, I like the genie question. First thing we got to do, we got to develop a good rapport with the other elected officials. Okay? If I run for re-election as clerk, I want them all to endorse me. That's what I want. So we're building a good rapport. That's number one. We have to open the budget. These people are struggling. They're not being able to use the software because the access is restricted. So we need to open up the budget and treat the employees fairly.
Thank you, Mr. Gukin. Mr. Brannon, you win the election. You walk in on your first day on your new term. Same question to you.
Continue to serve the citizens of this county with integrity and honor. And I really do like that Dan keeps referencing my concepts in the voter guide to build the new rapport with the new commissioners. We are going to have 2 new commissioners. That's a fact. And I am looking forward to training them and giving them the knowledge that I have and asking them what they need to do their jobs.
And I guess, in fairness, Mr. Gukin, I'll let you respond to
the clerk's job is not to train the commissioners. I mean, you know, the clerk is a functionary job, answers to policy. The commissioners set the policy, clerk follows the policy. Clerk can set his policy for his 5 departments. But the commissioners are in charge of the county. They are in charge, not the clerk. The AIC will be the ones who will be training the commissioners and telling them what's going on. The commissioner's staff will assist them. The clerk will take the minutes at the meetings and report the minutes back in a timely manner, not 5 weeks, but probably within a week or 2.
Okay, so that was a very specific claim of 5 weeks, Mr. Brannon. Would you like to respond to that?
No.
Okay, I can say that I've learned a lot more about the county clerk's position through this process, and want to thank you both. We're going to move into the final closing statements, and Mr. Brannon, you're going to be first. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank everyone for coming this evening. See a lot of familiar faces, some friendly, some not so, but good to see you all here. Your vote matters. Choose leaders that speak to your values. Results matter, promises have been kept, and principled leadership rarely takes the easy route. I will continue to work hard to make certain you're getting the most for your hard-earned tax dollars. You deserve substance, not just promises. I would appreciate your vote to re-elect me county clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Gookin. Your turn.
Thank you. I'd like everyone to visit the website, dangookin.com, as well as watch my YouTube videos, which are at youtube.com/dangookin, and you can learn more about this race and what I intend to do. I'm looking forward to this. I want to work well with everyone at the county. I'm looking forward to that. I know there's many employees who are looking forward. They're staying low, but they're looking forward to it. I think we need to restore transparency. That's my big issue. Right now, it's just not happening. There's no transparency. There could be a lot more. I mean, it's the minimum amount. So let's open up the budget. Let's get comments from that guy who does 1,000 records requests, and let's see if we can go ahead and answer those and meet with him in person and do a budget that's transparent. I don't want to spend $425 to win an award just to put a lot of text in a budget. I want information that the citizens can use, and I'm going to go ahead and be an effective, positive clerk, work well with everyone. I look forward to your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, that concludes this portion of the event, and thank you both for being here and taking the time, and thank you, everybody. I think they deserve a round of applause.
Thank you. Jay.
All right, folks.
You're good, go.
All right, folks, moving right along in the spirit of time, we now welcome to the stage candidates for the your Kootenai County Commissioner's District 3 seat, Leslie Duncan and Ruben Miranda. Mrs. Duncan will be the first to provide an opening statement. Mrs. Duncan, when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm a 19-year resident here in rural Kootenai County, a rural property owner. And I have experience in the public sector, 10 years in law enforcement, and 14 years owning a small business is my experience in the private sector. Currently, I serve on 3 volunteer boards, and I chair 2 of them. My experience on the Aquifer Protection District, which is a county policy and budget committee that reports directly to the Board of Commissioners, has helped me understand the true role of a commissioner. I've been involved in 4 budget cycles, and we have a $500,000 budget on the APD. I've attended probably over 100 meetings in the last 4 years, and I feel like I know what I'm in for, although nobody can know 100% until you're sitting behind the desk. I know people in all 4 corners of our county, Athol to Harrison to Eastside to Post Falls, and I feel like I can represent each one of them with dignity, respect, and the professionalism that comes with being a commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Miranda, when you're ready.
My name is Ruben Miranda, if anybody doesn't know out there. I'm trying to be your commissioner as well. I have been here myself 4 years, but my lovely wife, Mary, was born and raised here. And we have owned property in Post Falls for the last 18 years. So when I retired after 32 years as a chief information officer of a company, my lovely wife said she'd like to go home. And after 30 years together, I never learned how to say no to that woman. And I hope I never do. So here we are. I saw issues that I believe could be fixed, and it kind of spoke to my inner administrator self, because I was a, as I said, chief information officer of a company. So I am accustomed to administration, management, problem solving, planning, budgets. Worked a budget of $22 million.
So, as somebody that's a lifelong Idahoan, what took you so long to get here after owning property for 18 years? You just got here 4 years ago.
My job.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right, Ms. Duncan, we'll start with you. I'm sorry, Mrs., excuse me. The average household in Kootenai County is a family of 4, and they make around $51,000 a year. How would you serve as a commissioner, specifically impact that average household in our Kootenai County?
Well, by keeping regulations down and allowing small businesses to operate, that's one way to encourage families to be able to afford things. Encouraging free market competition with everything, all the services, is what can keep costs low and provide opportunities for those families.
Okay, Mr. Miranda, please.
Well, I believe that the people, especially those who are in the lower income brackets, deserve as an equal share or a part of the share of this great economy that we all enjoy. I think that we need to be assured that we have plans to sustain an economic environment that is positive, and we need to make plans to help those kind of people share in that economic positive environment. There are many ways of doing it. Looking at unnecessary regulations is one way. The other way might be in looking for ways to encourage by either education. Sorry.
Don't get the hang of it.
Look over this way.
Thank you, Mr. Miranda. This question is to you. What ideas do you have as commissioner to ensure that our infrastructure is equipped for and properly funded to accommodate our projected growth?
Growth is indeed an important issue. It is probably the most important issue we will be facing. Here again, strategic planning. Okay, you cannot stop the growth, but you can plan for it as best possible. There's only 3 ways of stopping it. None of them are good or viable options. They may be happening in the future. I have plans to try to encourage companies, especially out at the airport, to come here who pay technically or usually historically higher wages for the same function. And I will listen to the people for any ideas that they might have. I think communication here is the big thing. If we want to help people. That one almost worked.
You can finish your sentence. You're fine.
Period.
And same question to you, Mrs. Duncan.
Sure. It's going to take a community effort, knowing what the residents want and understanding how the agencies work together, how the cities are able to continue to annex large chunks of land in and then build homes there. So it's an opportunity for the county to work together with all of the cities and all of the other agencies like IDT for our roads and the highway districts in order to successfully map out a plan so that we can maintain positive infrastructure while all this growth is happening. I don't want the growth to stop, but I do want it to be managed in a way where the residents who are already here are as blessed as the residents coming here.
Thank you, Mrs. Duncan. This question's to you. In a Coeur d'Alene Press article dated September 30th, your response to a question about the building code opt-out provision was, should I be successful in November, I will only be one vote on the board. With the building code opt-out provision being such a hot topic of interest, will you disclose on how you would vote on the repeal of that ordinance given the likelihood of that case?
So you say building codes, it's actually permit process. The building codes have been adopted and are here in Kootenai County. It's the opt-out process that has changed. What I would do is put forth a suggestion that we allow private inspectors who are licensed and bonded to alleviate some of the overly bureaucratic process that we have in the county. And I would like to see those inspectors be able to be accountable, and the county inspectors are not. They're not liable in the case of errors. So I would like to see more privatization come in and be able to alleviate some of that burden.
So question for you on that, would that in effect restore the previous provision and replace it? Or would you still provide that provision that county citizens could opt out?
It's a difficult question to answer because there's so much information that I'm not privy to and that I would obviously learn once I am commissioner. I would like to allow the choice in the county to provide for their own inspectors rather than using the county inspectors.
So just to further clarify, I'll get to you, Ms. Aranda, but you are still in favor of having that option for county citizens to opt out should they want to exercise that?
To opt out of county inspections, yes.
Thank you for that.
All right, Ms. Miranda, you're on record as stating that you would vote to repeal the building code opt-out. What do you say to the citizens who have exercised their legal right or plan to do so in the near future and save thousands of their hard-earned dollars and cite the benefit of having less red tape associated with their construction process?
I would tell them, as I told a gentleman the other day up at Bayview, that the problems, the red tape, has nothing to do with the building codes, which are very basic. It's the procedure by which we go through to do it. Those procedures have been very cumbersome in the past. They are have been, by most part, fixed. We can fix them more. I will set up a communications between the buildings associations and the developers or what have you to get constant feedback so that we know the procedures are getting fixed and are efficient. But basically, I'll tell you, my first action will be to repeal the opt-out. It, in my opinion, is and will be gone.
Really quick follow-up to that, Mr. Miranda. It can be fixed versus it will be fixed. There's still citizens out there that feel like they're saving their dollars and they're saving time. And I understand you're interested in wanting to promote efficiencies, but what do you tell those folks that say, hey, I can do this by myself and it's my property?
Primarily, I'll say you're going to find that you cannot do it yourself unless you are a contractor builder. Secondly, you're buying yourself a lot more expense down the road. A licensed engineer to come out and do inspections so you can get either a mortgage or a CO, certificate of occupancy, can cost you up into $1,500 to $2,500 an hour, because their license is at risk when they sign off on that. It's not a cheap process, not at all. So a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of people don't realize that down the road, it's going to cost you money.
And this is a hot button issue, so we're camping out for a little bit. But Mrs. Duncan, how do you respond to claims that letting the free market, help save costs and time may end up costing the homeowner potentially more money or damages?
Well, what I want to clarify is that all state inspections still exist. Your electrical, your plumbing, your septic, HVAC, those are all still mandated and inspected by the state. So none of that has changed. I still stand by the fact that the homeowner should have the choice of hiring their own licensed bonded inspector over the county inspector who has no liability. And they can price it out, which is cheaper, going with the county or going with the private industry.
And Mr. Miranda, the airport has also been a topic of great discussion over the past few years. If elected, what vision do you have for the Coeur d'Alene Airport?
I have visions that we can use it to become a very viable source of jobs, high-paying jobs, which the aviation industry tends to be, okay? We need to develop those kind of jobs. We need to use it to become attractive to industry that want to move here. That's one thing that a company, if they're like the one I used to work for, would look at if you wanted to change your location. The viability of transportation in and out and the viable airport.
Thank you. And Mrs. Duncan, same question to you.
Can you just repeat it again?
The airport has also been a topic of great discussion over the past few years. And if elected, what vision do you have for the Coeur d'Alene Airport?
Sure. It is true. It is a very attractive asset that we have, and I would do everything I could to work with airport management and ensure that we are offering the best private services. Hold on here. Yes, I would like to encourage private service to come to the airport rather than having the county control all of the commerce that happens at the airport. So I would encourage businesses to come in and utilize our great asset.
Thank you. And Mrs. Duncan, we're going to change the order up and go to you again on this question. Having reviewed the budget in depth in preparation for your role as a commissioner, what is the first line item you would cut, and what is the area that you believe is in most dire need of additional funding?
That's a good question. There's a lot of different things to look at. I don't know that I can pin it down to one thing. I know that employee pay has been a big issue across the board, and I would like to see that come up to par, where certain offices we pay more and certain offices we pay less than the private sector, and I would like to get more of a uniformity going there. So that's one thing that I would look at, and I would just definitely look into any services we're providing that are not mandated that can be better provided by the private sector.
Thank you. And Mr. Miranda, same question to you.
Yes. I hesitate to say what's the first thing I'll cut. That's going to require some research. That's going to require some information that I currently do not have. But the objective, or the most important thing, are wages, especially for our policing force, our deputies. Okay, we are losing them by the gads to neighboring jurisdictions who pay considerably more, and that is not a good thing. You cannot ask a man or a woman to go out and risk themselves, risk the future of their families, and pay them so much less than comparable risks in other jurisdictions. That is not even human.
So quick clarification. I appreciate both of your comments. You both cite fiscal responsibility on your websites, and you both talked about two areas that very well could need additional funding. But we didn't talk about reductions, so we only talked about increasing wages, which are probably the largest line items that you're going to come across. If you had to guess, would you be willing to guess at what you would most likely, or avenues that you would like to exercise in order to balance out those increases to keep in line with your wishes for fiscal responsibility?
Is that to me?
We're going to start with Mrs. Duncan, please.
Sure. I would look at personnel under the BOCC departments to start off, to make sure that people are in the right job per se. And then I would, it's honestly just our biggest expense with the county is personnel, but honestly, they're our biggest asset. They're amazing. They know how to provide a good service, and I want to encourage that. So just to go and say I want to cut something, it's difficult without being down in the weeds right now. And I would, once in office, I would really try to utilize new growth to pay for employee parity rather than raising taxes to do that. And I think there are ways that we can do that. And there's been some talk with the benefits and some rearranging, I think, that can possibly be done to make that happen. But as far as just cuts across the board, it's without really further detail, I wouldn't do it justice.
Understood. And we're going to give you the same chance to answer, Mr. Miranda.
I would not guess. I will make no decision ever based on a guess. I need research. I need facts. I need to see who's hurt, who's helped to make my decisions. Yes, we've been talking about raising things. And yes, you brought up the big T word, taxes, okay? I believe that you cannot have this kind of growth, almost 6% a year or more, and still remain at a zero tax level. It's not going to happen. I would be lying to you if I thought it would, okay? Yes, we're probably going to see them go up no matter who gets elected. It's just not possible to keep it down, okay? Other than that, yeah. But even at that, I promise you one thing, I won't base any raise on a guess.
Understood. We'll move forward now.
All right, Mr. Miranda.
Yes, sir.
The second sentence under my statement on your website, mirandaforkootenai.com, states, "What's more, I'm running as a Democrat." With the majority of the voting residents of Kootenai County affiliating with the Republican Party, why should they cast a vote for a Democrat as a county commissioner?
Because the counties are county commissioner seats are totally, in my opinion, nonpartisan. We won't make decisions based on right-wing or left-wing Republican or Democrat ideologies. It's just not going to happen. We're going to make decisions based on things that are going to affect you immediately and severely, okay? Has nothing to do with partisan politics.
And I completely understand that, Mr. Miranda, but it was your words that said, "What's more, I am running as a Democrat." So that's kind of our angle that we're going with. So.
Oh, okay. Well, wanted people to know that. Okay? I mean, I wouldn't lie to them. I actually had somebody tell me that they liked my ideas, but I should re-register as a Republican because I could not win as a Democrat. And I thought that to myself, and I said, you know, if I did that, I would feel like I was living under a lie. I am a Democrat. But I tell you one thing, I know for a fact, I promise you this, I will never make a decision based on my ideology, one way or the other. I do not do that.
Thank you, Ms. Miranda. And Mrs. Duncan, you cite your conservative politics on your website, leslieduncan4kc.com. That said, we've had 2 Republican incumbents lose their election bids in the May primaries, and they both also cited their conservative principles. What sets your conservative principles apart from the previous commissioners that were denied another term?
So you have 2 factors at play here. The first of all, I'm just going to talk about my seat, District 3. I narrowly lost winning in the 2016 primary by 69 votes out of 15,000 votes cast. 69 votes in the whole county of missing that seat. So with that said, I don't think that that the commissioner did what he said he was going to do. He didn't stick to his conservative principles, and he made a lot of decisions that caused, I think, of undue financial burden on the county by approving things outside the budget cycle. And that's my opinion. So as far as I believe that commissioner is very partisan because 10% of your role has to do with land use. And typically land use and property rights are encouraged by the Republican platform. And I stand by the Republican platform, especially when it comes to encouraging free enterprise and limited government. Those are the things that are important to me, and that's why I associate with that party, because our community will thrive under limited government and free enterprise. It happens time and time again.
Just really quick, because I grilled him after he
Sure.
said what he did. What would you say to the overall, or the county, those voters that voted purely on the opt-out provision, whereas that might have been a little aggressive of an approach providing that?
Okay, can you please clarify your question?
Sure. So in an effort to promote private property rights, the opt-out provision, I would say that that's probably falls
Are
under
you
that.
indicating that's why I was chosen?
No. I guess what I'm saying is that was a position that both of the sitting commissioners ran on and found themselves not running anymore.
Right.
So with regards to that, how'd you stand up to that, to the voter that's undecided?
Okay. Well, I guess I would have to disagree with that. The District 3 representative was voted out because of the permit process. I believe he was voted out because he lacked conviction of his conservative rhetoric when he ran. That's what I believe. As far as I'm not afraid of offering the county residents a choice. Our permit process is broken in the county, and it's run more like it belongs to a city. And I want to give the county residents options. I want to free them of bureaucratic process. We have cities and county for a reason. If you like what the services are offered in the city, please move to the city. If you want a little bit more freedom and the ability to take your own garbage to the dump and not have the service at your street, then you should be able to do that. I like choice. I like win-win situations. But when you have the overreaching bureaucratic process for people who move here on purpose to have a little bit more freedom, to build a 250 square foot chicken foot. I'm just getting better at this. Okay, so in order to build a chicken coop over 200 square feet, you have to have a permit from the county. That to me is wrong.
Thank you.
All right, candidates, this is your chance to address some frustrations your constituents. And we're going to go ahead and start with you, Mrs. Duncan. Traffic in Kootenai County. Go.
That's really working with ITD and some of their long-term plans. I understand that they had long-term plans in place, but our growth overcame when their plans were to be put into place, if that makes sense. So once again, I'm going to work with them and make sure that our residents are able to get where they need to go. And that's, I mean, it's not a whole lot a commissioner can do except for working with the other agencies to alleviate the traffic problems.
And Mr. Miranda, same question, traffic in Kootenai County.
Yeah, well, believe it or not, I agree with Leslie. Not a lot the commissioners can do, but a lot we can get done if we're willing to communicate and talk reasonably to other agencies. A lot we can get done if we say we have these issues, let's sit down and work them out. And that's kind of something that doesn't happen near as often as it should. And I think if we press that, if we make that a priority, yeah, we can get things done. We can only try, in other words.
All right, Mr. Miranda, another quick one for you. A common frustration in Kootenai County, the DMV. Go.
The DMV is a common frustration in every country, in the every state in the country. But that, here again, that's run predominantly out of Boise. Okay? Yeah. You're talking about the you're talking about issues that, here again, have to be dealt with by inter-department communication and discussion. All right? I mean, that's really, you know, frustrations will always be there. We can try to make it better by hiring more people, putting in decent software that works. And trust me, that's not always the case. But yeah, nothing else.
Mrs. Miranda, same question. Or I'm sorry, Mrs. Duncan, excuse me.
Thank you.
I apologize, I'm reading off the wrong page.
That's okay.
apologize.
Working interagency is going to be the key. Working with the Sheriff's Department to see if there's anything the Board of Commissioners can do to help him. Honestly, it is a mandate that does come out of Boise, and so it's very frustrating to have to try to fulfill some of those mandates without proper funding. And it's just one of those things that I'd like to work with the legislature to find out how we can make this an easier, better process.
Thank you. And Mrs. Duncan, the transit station has received a lot of attention in the past few years. What should its long-term vision look like?
I think its long-term vision should look like serving the cities of Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and the county. I don't think that it should serve any place outside of Kootenai County.
And same question to you, Mr. Miranda.
Well, I think the transit center is an incredibly good return on investment. Your investment as a taxpayer. The whole operation costs about $2.1 million, of which $1.6 million came from a federal grant. The Kootenai tribe donated the land. So our investment was right at about $500,000 for a center that is going to really increase our transit abilities. Companies, here again, companies that are going to come here, looking at relocating here, that's going to be one of the first things they ask. I've been there. I've done that kind of research. And transit is very important.
Mrs. Duncan, so what would you say to those thousands of county residents that do commute across the border on whether that expansion would be good and save them money?
That I would have to see, because every city that I have studied where they have done rapid transit, the total demographics change, the crime rate changes, and even our own Chief White would have had a different opinion had it been proposed that we hook up with Spokane. So that's something that it would be a long time to convince me that that is a real need. And yeah.
And Mr. Miranda, so would you say you would be in favor of expanding that to Spokane?
Yes, if there was a great need, yes, I would. When the traffic on 90 becomes backed up and it takes you an hour and a half to get to work because you're bumper to bumper, people are going to start looking for something like that. Yes, I would be in favor of looking at it. I do not believe that it will bring added crime. I just don't think of that. I have never seen a bank robber rob a bank and then go jump on a bus. Okay? They usually bring their own driver and getaway car. Okay? So no, I would definitely look at that. I would definitely look at that. But that's going to take a lot of cooperation. That's going to take a lot of work. It's not something we're going to do in a year or overnight, believe me. Not at all.
And would that be counter the notion that you would be attracting businesses to North Idaho if you were expanding your transit to go across the border and lure more businesses across that?
Not at all. Not at all. Because that train or those buses, you know what? They run both ways. Yeah? So that would increase the employment pool, the workforce pool, for companies willing to, who would rather settle here because we are much prettier and we're a much better place to live.
All right. Mr. Miranda, how do you feel about hiring of a county official, or I'm sorry, a county administrator?
I initially don't have a good feeling about it. That's not meaning that I would be totally opposed to it. But I got to tell you, to me, that puts way too much power in the hands of one man, one person. Your governing body becomes, at best, part-time, you know, sometimes less. And then they come in and they try to read thousands of pages of stuff. So basically, unable to do that, they start rubber stamping things. And I don't care for that at all. So I think we really need to study that a lot more before we jump into that. And that would have to go to the ballot anyway. That's a ballot issue.
All right, Mrs. Duncan, same question to you.
Yes, and when it was on the ballot several years ago, the county overwhelmingly voted it down. It's a regional form of government. It takes the control out of the elected officials' hands, and now the person making the decisions is no longer directly accountable to the voters, and I'm completely against that. I definitely believe that there are many ways that we can increase the efficiency at the board level, and I have some ideas going forward. But no, it would not be a good thing for Kootenai County. And my understanding is where it has been implemented, it has not been as successful as the people had hoped it was.
And one last question, Mr. Miranda, what do you see as the challenge that you are most excited to tackle when it comes to representing your most rural constituents?
Building code streamline, okay? I understand their frustrations, but I think we can work those frustrations out by getting together and talking about it. That's going to be the challenge, because I think opting out of building codes is just not good for the county. So that's the biggest one. That's the biggest one.
And same question to you, Mrs. Duncan.
Sure. First of all, opting out of the building codes really isn't on the table. The building codes exist, and like I said, all the electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and septic all still exist. We're talking about a permitting process. And I live in the rural county, and I have friends and neighbors, hundreds of them, and I do know what they need and what they want. So offering choice, offering a less bureaucratic process. I'm very interested in enhancing the lives of the people who live in the county. That's what commissioners are supposed to do. You have a mayor and city council to enhance the lives of the people in the city.
and you both brought it up, so I just wanted to touch on this. What do you say to the folks that have that exception appear under their title that reflects years down the road, and folks may, potential buyers may look at that property as flawed due to that exception on title? What do we say to those folks? I'll start with you, Mrs. Duncan.
Sure. I say I believe in personal responsibility, and we make choices every single day of our lives that can affect the rest of our lives. So if you are choosing to opt out of the county permitting process and not choosing to get a certified inspector who you can have show documentation for, then that is a risk that you might run. But in my instance, the city of Athol has no building codes, not just no permitting process, but no building codes, and they're buying and selling, insuring, and mortgaging just fine.
However, they don't have that exception to title, is that correct?
I don't know. I mean, they have a site plan, if you will, but I don't know about the...
I believe the opt-out is what triggers that exception to title.
Okay.
Mr. Miranda? For you.
Yeah, I think people are going to discover that exception to title is going to cost them a great many headaches down the road, especially if they attempt to sell the property. And I think what's going to happen is that because of that exception to title, they're not going to have the pool of buyers that they otherwise would have. So they're going to start dropping their price. And they're going to continue to drop their price until they find somebody who's willing to take on the expense of bringing that engineer in, doing that destructive testing to assure that they can get mortgaged, okay? In the process of dropping that price, guess what happens to the property values around that property? That is now used as a comp, and everybody else's property values will sink. That's not fair. That's not fair. Robert Frost said, good fences make good neighbors. I say, good building codes make good communities.
I think in the spirit of time, that concludes the questions portion of the debate, and we will move on to closing statements. And Mr. Miranda, you're first.
Well, I come here to try to garner your vote. I hope I did a little bit, at least answer your questions about what I am, who I am. I was 32 years the chief information officer of a company. In my tenure as that, I became a problem solver, a people person. I can deal with all of the people, big and small, little and what have you, a research artist, and somebody who knows about ROI, return on investment. I know what the return on investment in either in money or in efficiency, in quality, it all has to be considered. As a veteran of the United States Army, as a team leader in some special groups while I was in Vietnam, I learned the value of a good decision. I also learned the heartbreak of a poor decision. That's why I have said earlier on, I do not make decisions willy-nilly.
Thank you. Mrs. Duncan, your closing statements, please.
Sure. I believe in the proper role of government, and that is to protect life, liberty, and property. Believe it or not, it's not to protect property value. And once again, personal responsibility is very, very important. And once again, if your property's valued lower, then you pay less taxes. So I'm asking for the opportunity to serve our community as commissioner. I have proven my dedication to our community and the desire to serve the citizens here. People move here because of the beauty, because of the friendly people, and the atmosphere of freedom. I pledge to protect that, not to change it. I have been serving in the community longer than my opponent has lived here. He, as well as the other two commissioners that I would serve with, all live in the city. I don't believe that an activist from California who's only been here a few years can positively know all the needs and desires of the rural community. Elect me to be the voice for the rural residents and all the residents here in our beautiful county. And thank you so much for coming here tonight.
Thank you both very much for your participation. We really, really appreciate it. And on behalf of the Coeur Group, we would like to thank all the candidates, the good folks at CDA TV that make this a polished product, those at the city that trust us with this opportunity more than we deserve, and the citizens for getting more acquainted with those vying for your vote on November 6th. Tonight's event will continue to be broadcast on CDA channel 1301, as well as available streaming on the City of Coeur d'Alene's Facebook page and the city's YouTube channel. Drive safe. Have a great night. Thanks for participating.